Guys, welcome back to my channel. My name is Mike. You guys are rocking with me in Mike's Intellectual Corner. On today's episode, we are diving back into the Alexander the Great Part 2. Without further ado, we're just going to dive right in.
In 334 BC, Alexander, the 21-year-old king of Macedonia, led a coalition of Greek forces against the greatest power of the age, the Persian Empire. He led an army of skilled veterans, at its heart men of the Macedonian phalanx, armed with the 18-foot sarissa pike, and the elite horsemen of his companion cavalry. Together, at the Battle of the River Granicus, they'd won a first decisive victory over the Persian army. Now, as Alexander approached Sardis, capital of the Persian province of Lydia, its commander surrendered without a fight.
I'm sure he did. I mean, if I'm not mistaken, the entire army for the entire province of Lydia was just destroyed. Not destroyed, but pretty much beaten at that last battle. So, I mean, what choice does he really have? You know what I'm saying? So let's see that.
The fight. But before Alexander could advance further, he needed to neutralize Persian naval power. Persia had a powerful fleet with major naval bases around the eastern Mediterranean that could potentially cut his lines of communication back to Greece. Rather than challenge the Persians at sea, Alexander decided to attack its nearest bases, the Greek coastal cities of Miletus and Halicarnassus. Both put up determined resistance, but were taken by winter. The following spring of 333 BC, Alexander continued his advance into Lycia and Phrygia. At Gordium, he was shown the legendary Gordian knot. A prophecy said that whoever could unpick it would rule all Asia. Alexander simply took his sword and sliced it in half. Meanwhile, Memnon of Rhodes, a skilled Greek general in Persian service, led Persian warships into the Aegean and captured the islands of Chios and Lesbos. But after Memnon's sudden death from illness, the offensive was abandoned.
Guaranteed it was abandoned just for the fact that they all had to go back and, you know what I'm saying, be there for the concessions and all that stuff, and for the parades and all that. You can tell it's kind of one of those type of selfish type of things where whoever was taking over, probably his son or whatever, was like, you know, F everything that's going on. Even though we're losing half of our kingdom, we have to honor my father. That way he has a kingdom to even be buried in. You know what I'm saying?
Death from illness, the offensive was abandoned. "18 months had passed since Alexander's army crossed the Hellespont and invaded the Persian Empire. Now Alexander led his men into Cilicia and was soon poised to cross the Nur Mountains into Syria. But then the main Persian army, led by King Darius III himself, emerged behind the Greek army to the north. Darius was determined to trap and destroy Alexander's army, which he outnumbered almost 2 to 1. So he blocked Alexander's only escape route by moving his army to the coastal plain near Issus, just 6 miles wide, from mountains to sea. The narrow battlefield would force Alexander to fight, but it also...
Yeah, I was about to say, it's just going to create a huge funneling, like a really big funneling effect. But I mean, if Alexander's army can match that front, then I mean it does nothing for you essentially, especially with his phalanx in front. It does nothing for you. So
prevented Darius exploiting his huge numerical advantage. His army, by some estimates, was up to 100,000 strong, and contained some of the finest soldiers in his vast empire, including 10,000 of his own household troops, known as the Immortals. His best cavalry were massed on his right towards the sea, where the ground was better for horses. His best infantry, his Greek mercenary hoplites, formed the centre.
But already I can already see a disadvantage because those hoplites in the middle, they're not going to do anything against those phalanx. Those phalanx are going to tear right through them. And then, if I'm not mistaken, Alexander has more horses on his side. So although the Persians have a bigger army, I can see why Alexander has more of a advantage here than the Persians do, because he has more advanced troops, if that makes sense, on his side.
Persian infantry formed his left wing. Alexander deployed his own army for battle, once again entrusting his left wing, nearest the sea, to Parmenion, with the Greek cavalry and infantry. In the centre, as always, was the Macedonian phalanx. Alexander positioned himself and his best troops on the right wing, toward the mountain slopes. His elite Agriane javelin throwers, his archers, and behind them the Hypaspists and the companion cavalry. When Alexander saw the strength of the Persian cavalry facing Parmenion on the left, he moved across his Thessalian cavalry to reinforce him. Despite his overwhelming numbers, Darius held his position behind a small river, the Pinarus, and waited for Alexander to attack. He didn't have to wait long. Alexander called out to his men, urging them to fight bravely, picking out some by name.
And I guarantee you right there, ain't nothing gonna bring up your men's morale than calling out some of the smallest men by their name, letting them know that not only does, their general, but their king know their name. He appreciates what they're doing for him. You know what I'm saying? That's just gonna, if anything right there, that's just him building the loyalty, up to, you know what I'm saying? Here's the max. He's it's already through it. You know what I'm saying? Let's see.
Then, at the head of his army's right wing, he charged. Once again, the speed and shock of the Macedonian advance sent the enemy reeling back. But in the center of the battlefield, the Macedonian phalanx was in trouble. In its effort to keep up with Alexander, its formation had become disordered. Now, in fierce fighting with Darius's Greek mercenaries, the phalanx was slowly being driven back. Alexander, seeing the danger, regrouped and led the companions in a headlong charge straight at the Persian center. The Greek mercenaries threatened on their flank were soon in disarray, and the Macedonian phalanx was able to resume its advance. Alexander fought his way towards the great king Darius himself. Rather than face this apparently mad and fearless Macedonian king, Darius fled the battlefield in his royal chariot. Meanwhile, the Macedonian left wing under Parmenion was in a desperate fight against the best of the Persian cavalry. If the Persians could break through here, they could envelop Alexander's army and snatch victory from the jaws of defeat. But Parmenion and his troops fought doggedly and continued to hold the Persians at bay. As the news that Darius had fled spread among his troops, they abandoned the fight and tried to save themselves.
Crazy.
The battle turned into a massacre. Ptolemy, one of the Macedonian commanders, told Alexander there were so many Persian dead, his men had used them to fill a deep ravine so they could cross over it.
Yeah, and I'm sure even then they still weren't, you know what I'm saying, like, used to seeing that many dead bodies or anything like that. That is just insane to think about, because, I mean, think of somebody finding that in today, like an archaeological dig or something like that, just, oh crap, you know what I'm saying? You see the skeletons and stuff, you might even see like maybe a vest still intact or something, like maybe one at the very bottom that was still, you know what I'm saying, so heavily, you know, underground and stuff that was so well preserved. It's just crazy to think about, but clear and all that stuff, it's just crazy to think about. Let's see.
Alexander, there were so many Persian dead, his men had used them to fill a deep ravine so they could cross over it. The Battle of Issus was a stunning victory for Alexander. And amongst the spoils of victory were Darius's wife, mother, and 3 children, all taken alive and well treated by Alexander. With the Persian field army in retreat, Alexander now turned to subduing the western territories of the Persian Empire. The next year, 332, the coastal cities of Phoenicia submitted to Alexander, ending Persian naval power in the Mediterranean. But the island city of Tyre resisted.
Yeah, I was about to say, this is actually pretty famous. One of his more famous battles is whenever they couldn't figure out like how to get there, and he started freaking building that bridge very slowly towards him, with the siege towers at the forefront towards the island. And if I'm not mistaken, those ships right there are fire ships, the Tyre fire ships, where they have this mixture of oil and stuff like some other stuff like that in one cauldron, and a cauldron of fire. And once the ships bust into the bridge or whatever, they break, and you know what I'm saying, just the whole ship bursts in flames and stuff like that. It's pretty cool. But it's actually one of those. That's actually one of the technologies that's been lost to time. That we don't know how to, I think, recreate it the exact way that they did it, but it's pretty cool to think about. Let's see.
Territories of the Persian Empire. The next year, 332, the coastal cities of Phoenicia submitted to Alexander, ending Persian naval power in the Mediterranean. But the island city of Tyre resisted. Tyre's defenders fought bravely and skillfully, even when Alexander began building a causeway to the island, protected by 2 giant siege towers, which they counterattacked with fire ships. But after 7 months, the city walls were breached and Tyre fell. Most of its citizens were killed or enslaved. Gaza, too, was taken by siege. Alexander continued to Pelusium.
Poor Egypt. I feel like they really have not been the dominators of their own land in so long. You know, obviously not today, but there for so long they weren't. And it's a pretty crazy thing about Pelusium.
Alexander continued to Pelusium on the Nile Delta, where the Persian governor of Egypt surrendered the entire province to Alexander, along with the royal treasury. At Memphis, priests of this ancient land welcomed Alexander as their liberator from Persian rule, and crowned him pharaoh. At the mouth of the Nile, he founded a new city, Alexandria, then travelled to the desert oracle of Siwa, where according to some accounts the priests welcomed him as son of Amun, king of the gods. Alexander returned east to Tyre, where in 331 BC he received news of trouble back home. Despite his great victories over the Persians, many Greeks regarded Alexander as a tyrant. King Agis of Sparta, with Persian support, now launched a revolt against Macedonia. Antipater, Alexander's commander in Greece, was already dealing with rebellion in Thrace. But he quickly marched south and met Agis in battle near the city of Megalopolis. Even the legendary Spartans were now no match for Macedonian military power. The Spartan army was crushed. King Agis himself was among the fallen. With his base in Greece secure once more, Alexander advanced towards the Persian heartlands, seeking a final showdown with Darius. He received a letter from the Persian king offering him a fortune in gold, his daughter in marriage, and half his empire in exchange for peace. But Alexander's stunning victories, all the oracles and acclamations, had now convinced him that his destiny was to rule the world. He rejected the Persian king's offer. He didn't want half the empire.
It's crazy to think though, because I mean, they don't even know how big the world really is, and obviously they're about to find out by the end of this tour, this campaign. They're about to find out that yeah, the world's not even close to what they think is in terms of its size. You know what I'm saying?
He was coming to take it all.
Go ahead and end it right here though. So yeah, it's just really crazy to think about though. Just how really dominant they really were in this time. I guess, you know, it's just like how I think I said it a while ago. Every time period has this, you know, its world police, its top dominator, and that just, if need be, it could pretty much take on the entire world. But it's just crazy to think about. But in any case, so thank you guys again for joining me on another episode of Mike's Intellectual Corner. If you guys liked the episode, please don't forget to like, comment, subscribe. I'll see you guys on another one. I'm out. Peace.